Hello, I'm going to show you a tool called the Lotus Blossom Technique. This is something that was introduced to me by a lady called Sally Hindmarch, who's a great friend of mine and the director of a company called Partners With You. And this is a tool that she uses all the time in all her planning for her business. And she's also used it for planning personal projects as well. And ever since she told me about it, I've used it all the time. So let's have a look at it. Let's do the whole share screen thing. So this is the Lotus Blossom Grid. It was invented in Japan by Yasu Matsumura. And as you can see, it looks a bit like a Sudoku grid. If you Google Lotus Blossom, you can find lots of black and white examples, but I like this colored one because it makes it more clear. And as I'm very visual, I like the colors. It makes it a bit more inviting and inspiring. Now, I've used this myself to plan, and I've also used it with clients to help them see how they can move into action. It's a great way to capture thoughts and to get them into a manageable form rather than just running around your heads. And I'll show you some examples of how it's been used to plan an event and a career change. It's also been used to organize house moves, build businesses, and I've used it myself to devise talks, plan finding clients, designing coaching programs, etc. So how does it work? Well, as you can see on the blank template, in the center, there's a block of colored squares with a white square in the center. And this is your first blossom. If we go to the next example, so in the center, in this square, you write down the project name, or it could be a problem to be solved or a concept to be explored. And around the center, in these colored boxes, you write down a key concept or an idea or an area related to the project. So what you're immediately doing is breaking down a big idea and putting it into more manageable pieces. Now, it's easier to explain with a proper example. So here is one that's been used for events. So if, for example, you're planning an event, you write your event name in the middle. In this case, it was a conference, I think it was. In the 8 colored boxes around, you brainstorm the key things you need to think about, which would probably be venue, catering, program, suppliers, etc. Now you concentrate on filling these in first. And if you think of the lotus blossom as a flower, the colored boxes immediately surrounding the initial concept are the seeds to create more blossoms around the outside. So when you fill in as many of these seed pods, if you like, that you can think of, you then take each seed and you put it in the relevant box in the outside blooms. So venue here goes here, catering goes here, program goes out here. And then you go to each box and you do the same idea. You think, okay, venue, you break that down into smaller parts. So for instance, the location, access, facilities, room setup, etc. Or the catering, food, drink, timings, etc. So again, you're breaking everything down. And try your best to complete all of the blossoms and to fill in as many ideas as you can. Get at least 6 if you can of these ideas. Now, you might immediately be looking at this and thinking, well, how is this different from a mind map, really? Well, in truth, it's kind of similar to a mind map, but it's very helpful if you like things a little bit more structured. And it has the benefit that it pushes you to think of more ideas. Because if you filled everything in and you completed it fully, you would have at least 65 new ideas related to this original problem. Now, let me show you another example. This is the beginnings of a lotus blossom created by a client who is changing jobs. It's a work in progress, but this was produced in less than 5 minutes. So you see here, she's got exit strategy, and she was thinking about financial implications, timeline, what the new job would have to be like. She's put me, what were her values and her transferable skills, how would she go ahead with a job search, etc. So these were all her ideas. And the great thing is that because it is, or should be, kind of a living document, you can obviously go back and fill in more squares. But even so, you can see through this one that you can get a very good start in very little time. So this is, in essence, the Lotus Blossom tool. It's very, very simple. So again, you start with your central idea and expand it outwards. And the technique encourages you to fully flesh out your ideas before getting into action. It's a technique which kind of adds focus to classic brainstorming. Because sometimes, you can start with a blank piece of paper and you just don't know where to start. So this gives you a bit of a structure. It helps you to create more, often higher quality and more innovative ideas, because you have to push that bit further with your thinking. You kind of feel compelled to fill the boxes. And that's exactly what my exit strategy client said. She thought harder because she didn't want the blank spaces. So I find it a great tool because it's visual. It gives you the big picture and helps you to work it down into smaller steps. It encourages you to move into action because it stops a project being overwhelming. Once you've got the overview, you can concentrate on developing just, one square at a time. So for example, you can say, well, this week, I'm just going to concentrate on writing my CV, but I'm keeping all these other areas in my mind. So it takes the pressure off having to remember everything. As I say, it encourages more thinking because you kind of feel like you want to fill in as many boxes as possible. It makes you think about what have you forgotten or not considered. I find it's a great combination between structure and free flow. It can be used with other tools. I use this with to-do lists. Others use it to create timelines or do backward planning. If you're using it for an activity that you repeat, for instance, putting on an open studios, you can save it and go back to it for the next time that you're planning. I know someone who travels a lot for their business, and they have, in the days when we could travel, who has a very dogged version, which she uses to make sure that she's arranged all her travel, packed the right clothes, got the right equipment, etc. She just gets it out every time she's planning the next trip and maybe updates 1 or 2 areas. It can also be used on its own. I've seen it pinned to a wall to keep a project in the mind's eye. At the other extreme, I've also seen someone use it for a conference where all the papers were then put in a great big file. The first page was the lotus blossom of the conference overview, and then each of the separate blossoms was broken down into its own sheet with even more detail and filled with relevant details. And if you're using this colored version and are into deep level planning, you can get into some serious color coding. And to just give you a final example to show that I'm not just talking about this, I actually use it. This is an example that I've been putting together recently to help me think about how I'm going to be marketing Patreon. And as you see, this is just a little handwritten copy, A5, in my Filofax. So that's the Lotus Blossom. I hope you find it a useful tool, and the downloads are available along with this video. So enjoy having a play, see how it works for you. It might not work for everyone, but give it a try. It might be a very helpful new way of planning.